Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Portsmouth School Board meeting for November 7th, 2011. If I could ask the superintendent to please take the roll call.
Ann Mayer. Carol Chalman.
Here.
Rebecca Emerson. Kent LePage. Leslie Stevens.
Here.
Ann Walker.
Here.
Mitch Schulman.
Here.
Tom Martin.
Here.
Dexter Legg. Clay Haywood.
Here.
Linda Brulette. Liz Boynton.
So if we take a moment of silence, I'll just, Anne has something she'd like to say.
I'd like us to keep in mind Tina Ball, who was a member of New Franklin community for many, many years, and she passed away last week, and I'd like you to think of her.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A motion to accept the minutes of October 25th, 2011.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion about the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you. Public comment. So we have somebody who signed up. Zelita Morgan. Hi. Come, even though I just said your name, just say your name and where you live. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Zelita Morgan. I live on 39 Richards Avenue in Portsmouth, and I'd like to address the board tonight with regards to the composition of committees and subcommittees. It is my understanding that the board is considering putting together a committee or subcommittee to discuss the educational future and of Portsmouth, which avenues, what's going to be the vision or for our public educations. And I would encourage you, as part of that committee, that the board make it as representative as possible from all the districts, that you could probably include 5 individuals from each district. I think it would be very inclusive. It would provide a diverse add-on population to the discussions. I think it's important to have board members, others that the board will judge appropriate to be part of that committee, as well as other residents of our city and stakeholders. So that would be my recommendation. And specifically, I would really recommend, I would really like to see if someone from the WAVE, We All Value Education, does have a seat and representation in this committee. As you know, WAVE is trying to harness and gather community, stakeholders, all of us in Portsmouth, to discuss excellence in our public education. So I think it would be in the best interest of our community that we would also include a member of the WAVE. So thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out. Move to the superintendent's report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. In your materials, you have minutes from the policy committee meeting of October 20th. It references a couple of policies required by law, namely a drug-free workplace and school, as well as a safety program, which will be presented this evening for first reading. The committee will meet again on November 17th. You also have in your packet a copy of the November elementary school lunch menu. And to this end, I'd like to share with you that School Nutrition Director Deb Riso is actually inviting all school board members to attend a fall harvest luncheon on November 18th. It'll take place at each one of the elementary schools. It'll have roast turkey with gravy, mashed potatoes, baked yam casserole. We've got peas, we've got warm rolls, cranberry sauce, of course, and apple crisp. And she would really love it if we could get board members to each one of the elementary schools that day. So if you're so inclined, you could either email Deb, email Amy, or myself and let us know, and we'll see that we get all
A
this.
time would be helpful.
Yes, and so I'll send something out as well with the times for you folks. Thank you, Ann.
They're looking for people to serve food, or?
I think they want you to come in and enjoy the meal.
To eat.
You may, sir.
Wow.
Sounds great.
Great. You also have notice in your packet from Central Office Receptionist Cindy Vinciguerra that she'll retire after 11-plus years of service here in the district this June 2012. You also have a letter in your packet from Dover High School's Career and Technical Education Director, Jim Amaro, who's proposing a partnership basically between Dover and Portsmouth High School to basically run a Naval Junior Reserve Officer Training Program. Ms. Canada, I know, is here, who can answer any specific questions you may have, but in short, it's a situation where Dover does not have the requisite number of participants. They like to have 100. They're somewhere between 70 and 80. They've talked to Portsmouth, and we have some 20-plus students who have expressed an interest in participating in this program. In short, what they'd like to do is come and have the commander present the course second semester, starting this January, at no charge to the district. And if that course actually goes well next semester, then we'd revisit, look at what went well and didn't, and they're still offering to expand it for another year in 2012-13, a full year, again at no cost to the district. The only issue would be, or the request that Dover would have, is if we have students, openings rather, in our CTE program, and they have students who would like a seat, and we have space available, that they could actually come in and participate, let's say in the welding program or some program that Dover doesn't currently offer. Of course, Dover would provide the transportation for that. We have the openings, and that's really what the request is all about. Did I leave anything out, Diane, about that request? It's in the memo anyways, and so
The only question that had popped up was, is Dover footing the bill for the program?
Yes.
yes, they are.
I wasn't sure if it was part of the ROTC program that was footing the bill. And then at some later date, there would be some desire to have us pick up a certain amount of the cost.
Perhaps that may be, I think,
That might be down the road, but
Exactly.
the initial start is they're providing this no cost to the district.
that's right.
Okay.
The next year and a half, exactly.
Any other questions? So is this a year-to-year? Is this going to be year-to-year, or is it a commitment over X?
It is now.
Right. So if they have enough students next year in Dover to fill their need, would they not then come to Portsmouth?
That's not an anticipation that they have at this point. They've had, for a number of years, whatever the maximum number of years that the Navy allows, they've been trying to build the program, and they think that they have sort of maximized the number of students that will be interested in the program. And so they're looking to us to fill up to that 100 or more threshold that the Navy has. Otherwise, they pull the plug on the entire program and find another community where it would be filled. Thinking that because we have the Navy Yard here and because of the obvious maritime history of both towns, that it would be a good fit for us. We think that at the end of this year, we'll look at the numbers. I talked to Amy Donovan today, and we can fill our class for this next semester, and we anticipate that we would be able to fill it again. It runs in 4 semester classes, so we would start out with semester 1, and we talked with the commander about whether or not he'd be able to teach a combined ROTC 1, ROTC 2 class as we were trying to grow this, and he thought that that was certainly something that was doable. And at the end of if the end of this year, if we decide we want to move forward, we can go forward for next year at no cost to Portsmouth. And I've been very clear with him that the resources aren't there to pick this up, which is why informally we were trying to think of a way that we could have sort of a voucher program where if our students were involved in ROTC, that he would then be free to send students here for the 2 programs they don't have in Dover, which would be TV production and welding, but also they have some that are oversubscribed that we might have room for. At no time would our students be denied a space because a Dover student is going to be attending. It will always be Portsmouth students first.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. You need anything for us? Okay, great. And now for the prime entertainment of the evening.
The important reports of the evening.
Yes.
District reports. So,
Mr. Stokel from the middle school. Welcome.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to report. I know that you have a copy of my report. On the front page, you'll see a picture of our 8th graders who again this year climbed Mount Major, and that's part of our 5210 program. You'll see some other items there. The entire school will be walking to the high school on November 15th to view a portion of the fall musical. Our 6th graders attended a nutrition presentation by Deb Rizzo. I am happy to report that we've seen some major improvements in the lunch program. The salads at the middle school are very popular, far beyond what the cafeteria manager had thought. And the kids are really, I think, just loving the lunches. So we're seeing a lot of participation and some great feedback from the students, and that's a real credit to Deb. On the second page, I've given you the numbers for fall athletics, along with all the other extracurricular programs that we have, from electronics club to GOB and young historians. Those are all still in place. I've also given you the percentages of students who earned a merit card and the honor roll for the first marking term. I think those percentages are quite impressive. Now it's our job to make sure that they stay or they actually increase during the school year. The next piece is something new to the middle school this year, actually new to our district, and that's the Northwest Education Association testing. And we're actually using the MAP test, that stands for the Measures of Academic Performance. The NEWA or MAP test is a computerized test which all 6th, 7th, and 8th graders performed during the month of September. And so all classes in math and English went to the computer lab, and each test took approximately 1 hour. The beauty of this MAP test is if the math teacher takes all of his or her classes to the lab on a specific day, they have the results back the next morning by 8 o'clock, where it's all computerized. So you're not waiting 3 or 4 months to get results back. So the window for the testing was about 3 weeks. So the entire school, 6th, 7th, and 8th, all students, they would have completed the math and the reading test. And then once the window was closed, not only would the teachers have results on individual students and their class rosters, but we also would then have results on the entire grade level. So now they're able to use this data point as another way to inform their instruction, continue to work on their curriculum. So it gives us another data point on students over and above the ECAP test. And we're also looking at what's the correlation between the MAP test results and the kneecaps. I think we're finding a pretty high correlation there. There are some outliers, of course, I think, but overall, it gives us, again, another point that will really inform what our teams need to do when they develop curriculum and develop their plans and really what the needs are for the students during the year. It's broken down into 4 different categories in math and in reading, so it's going to tell us the strengths of each student and the weak areas of where we need to be looking at. I had mentioned to the faculty right early on in September that they were working on SMART goals, and I wanted our students to also work on SMART goals and develop SMART goals for the year. Well, as it turns out, not knowing that once the student takes this MAP test, it actually sets out goals for them for the year, because we'll give the MAP test more than once. The students took the test in September. We can do that again in January, and we can do it again in May. So it will show us progress throughout the year. So actually, a part of this program, each student gets a printout which talks about their, what's called their RIT score, which is a Ross unit, and where the folks from NEWA believe they should be in September and in May. Now, a RIT score is kind of like an SAT score. The high limit would be 300. And as an example, the 8th grade norm was 230 in math. So if a student scored 230, their goal may be to increase that score by 3 or 4 points by May. If a student scored a 200, their goal may be to increase that by 7 or 8 points by May. So now the students have a way that they can set their goals on these different RIT scores in math and in reading, and work with the classroom teachers on what's the best way to plan this so that you can actually attain this goal. So again, that's something new this year, and it's pretty exciting that it gives us that information back basically overnight, where the teacher gets scores on the individual students, but they also get scores on, let's say, my second period math class. So I'll see overall how that class did in my third period math class. So it may be that my instruction when I develop that for my third period math class is going to be a little different from my second period math class, depending on what that information is. So again, that's something new. We'll be doing the testing again in January, and we'll also do that again in May. They also offer testing in science and in language usage, which we're going to look at also using. We didn't want to do too much in September, knowing that our students are also going to jump into the kneecap testing in October. But we can, down the road, look at using the NEWAs for science and for language usage. The next piece is on the new master schedule. I know back in the spring when I reported to the board some major changes there, we've been able to, with that new master schedule, actually build in some intervention enrichment blocks for students. And I need to tell you that it's more successful than my wildest dreams. It has just turned out to be fantastic for our students. Students who need more time in math or in reading and language arts now have that opportunity during the school day. So some students would have 2 math classes during the day with their math teacher, or they'd have an English class and a reading class, possibly with their English teacher or with the reading specialist, or maybe with their special education teacher. So we're able to do more for those students in the intervention program, which ties right into our PLC work. Excuse me. We also have enrichment classes in science and social studies, and you'll notice here they're really running the whole gamut, where the students are helping to develop what that program looks like. In the case of some of our 8th grade students in social studies, they wanted to look at the history of Portsmouth. And as they went to the public library with their teachers, they kind of hit on the ghost of Portsmouth and asked if they could work on a project that involves that. So what they're doing is they're visiting some houses in Portsmouth where there are supposedly ghosts. And so they're really looking at that whole history of Portsmouth on that. Another project that one of our science, or 2 of our science teachers are doing is they've actually set up with Gilbane, our building contractors, and they're doing photography of the construction in progress and also writing narrative for that. And that's all being posted on our construction site. But before they could go on tours, they also had to go through a safety program which Gilbane provided for the students. And as it turned out, the day that they were out there, the masons were working, and the masons let them, put on some of the mud and set some block and so on. So it was pretty neat for the kids. Last week, they poured the 2nd and 3rd floors of the new addition. The nice piece about that was our tech ed classes were able to go to the library and through the windows see that process and then follow it up in tech ed class to talk about, the idea that 100 years ago, they would not have had these pump trucks which pump the concrete up to the 2nd and 3rd floor, and how might that have been done when they built the 1930 building. So we're really taking advantage of what's happening on that construction site. And again, that's been smooth as can be. The drop-off in the morning and the pickup in the afternoon, there's been no glitches at all. Gilbane's just been fantastic with all of that. The last piece would be our PLC work with the department heads. Again, I want to thank the board for adding the department heads in the 4 academics. That has been a real godsend. They're working with the high school department heads on a monthly basis so that everything is aligned 6 through 12 with that PLC work. All the SMART goals have been set. And again, the nice piece is the 6th grade SMART goals tie into the 7th and tie into the 8th. So it's not like the 6th grade is doing one thing, 7th is doing something different. One thing to mention along with that is the math program. We are piloting some different programs in 6th, 7th, and 8th. We may be ready next spring to make a decision, or it could be a 2-year process. But right now, people are piloting different programs from some different publishers. And with that, do you folks have any questions?
Great. Yes, Tom?
I just wanted to go back to the MAP test. I mean, it just is really fascinating that you kind of searched this out. Is the NEWA program similar to out there? Is it similar to the NECAP here?
Actually, it was brought to us by our superintendent, Mr. McDonough. As it turns out, it's used in a number of school districts across the nation. It's not something new all of a sudden. It's new to Portsmouth. But again, where it's computerized, the neat thing about it is no 2 students are taking the same test. So if there are 25 students in the computer lab taking the math test, the 2 folks beside me, their questions are going to be completely different from mine. And it actually tracks you as you're taking the test. I think on the math test there are 52 questions. You can't skip a question. If I'm on question 7, I have to answer 7 in order to go to 8. Because what it's trying to find out is, what is the challenge for you in math? The test is specifically set up that you're not going to get them all right. Because when a student sits down and we give them a test and they get every question right, that doesn't tell us a whole lot as to what we need to do with that student. And that's frustrating for some of our students. As a matter of fact, after the first day of testing, I went and met with one of the algebra classes and said, give me some input, what did you think about this test? It kind of frustrated them because they were used to getting all the questions right. And these would give you more and more challenging questions as you moved along. If you had 3 in a row correct, then you're going to get something a little more difficult because they're trying to find out what are the next steps that you need. So that was something different for our students. They tell us, the folks who did the training said, if a student took the test on Monday, went back to the computer lab on Wednesday to take the test, the chance of them seeing one of the problems they had is just so unlikely that it's amazing, because their bank of questions is in the millions. And the test is actually normed on 5 million students. So the norms that we get for September, like the 230 for 8th graders, there'll be a new norm in January. There'll be another norm in May, depending on what time of the year you're actually taking the test. So it gives us great information.
Right. So what I think I heard you say was that you're really using this as the developmental assessment, so that
Exactly.
you've got immediate feedback. So that it's not a matter of waiting for something to actually come back. You know, the next day, like, we have to do something different, or we can move on to the next step.
And then the 2 7th grade math teachers can get together and say, okay,
Right.
what are the weaknesses overall in the 7th grade? What are some things we just definitely have to concentrate on as far as our essentials are concerned?
Right.
We know that our students are doing well here. Now, there may be some students who need some additional support, and that's where the intervention programs come in.
Exactly. No, I
So
think that's
the intervention program
awesome.
can hit those individual pieces,
Makes sense.
and the teachers can then look at, overall, what are some areas that we definitely have to really hit this year in 7th grade or 6th grade or 8th grade to prepare students for the next level. This is really going to help us as we raise the bar in the math program. Because as I told you in the spring, I want us to be at the point where all 8th graders have an Algebra 1 program.
Right.
all seventh graders have a pre-algebra program. So this will give us information early on. Actually, once a student finished the test, their RIT score comes right on the screen. Well, of course, to the students the first time, they didn't understand what this RIT score was. So a lot had to happen in the classroom with the teachers explaining, what the score is all about.
Right. So maybe the question is back here to the administration. So is this something that does the MAP assessment exist for K-5, and I'm sure that it exists for high school, so, this is kind of a bit of a pilot, so to speak, that.
Well, exactly. What was, John's kind. I mean, I had some familiarity with it in a prior life, and I think it's a good tool for teachers. What was really nice was that I think teachers at the middle school were looking for some data right out of the gate for formative assessment to see where these children, where are they, and where they need to be. I think it gives good information to parents, because ultimately when they get that RIT score, they'll see how their child is performing against a nationally normed sample. Are they at grade level? Are they ahead of grade level? Are they below grade level, et cetera? I think parents get good information. Students get it by what we call goal strand, which is to say, against the New Hampshire standards, are they weak in, let's say, algebra, or in, computational skills, et cetera, et cetera. So where's the area they're strong, they're weak? Students are setting goals to get better. And then you also get it's a growth model. You get typical growth based on the 50th percentile. What any student with a RIT of 230 does in the course of a year in algebra, if it's 2 points, that's typical growth. And when you take the assessment in May, you'll see whether or not they achieve that. The higher you go up on the RIT band, the less the growth is going to be. Elementary school children are making gains of 8 or 9 points. You get to the high school, middle school, you're probably making 3 or 4 points. That's good growth. So, I think they have it in grade. They even have it in K now. But I think there's plenty of data for elementary school teachers whether or not clamoring for it.
Right.
I think if this goes well, it's probably a natural fit for. We don't get any key assessment data at the high school until the 11th grade.
Right.
So it may be an opportunity there in 9th, 10th grade down the road.
Well, I also see this as not just feedback for the student, but, we're trying to get some assessment on PLC, work.
That's correct.
And so this is also coming back to the teachers to really provide key feedback across grade level, teachers, and you said we're also expanding it to, is it reading?
Math and reading.
Language usage
You can
and
go
science.
science
yeah.
and
Well,
language.
and science, okay, so we could, but
can-
our next step is maybe to add in reading.
Well, right now, we're doing the reading and the math,
Oh, reading and math, okay.
and we can add in the language usage, and we can add in science if we
Okay,
want to.
if we wanted to, okay.
Down the road.
Got it.
But the nice thing is, like you said, with the PLC, it's going to tell folks in January, did we make a difference?
Right.
When you look at overall seventh grade, let's say, classrooms and individual students.
Right, and that's quantitative. I mean, that's,
And it's immediate, which is really neat.
yeah.
Immediate feedback.
Ann?
John, this sounds very much like something that they're doing in Dover, and I have seen the feedback forms that come that indicate how much progress the children have made and what they are expected to be achieving. My question actually is this costing us something?
Yes, Ed would know that.
What's it,
I'm
John?
sure
About
it's
$7 or
very
$8
well
per
worthwhile.
pupil?
Well, I think when I gave him a call to find out what it would cost to add the science on. And I think to add science on, it was like $2 per student. So I think for the math and the reading, it's probably $6 or $7 per student. So for 500 students, you're probably talking about $3,000, $3,500. And
that's
that's
the whole
testing
year.
3 times a year with all of these reports.
So that's the whole year?
For the same price.
That's short
Yes.
money.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
For that amount of money, you're able to open the window 3 times to do the entire school. Now, the other nice piece about it is, once the window is closed, and it's something we've initiated already, any new students coming in to register, they also go to the computer and take this test.
Great.
Now, they would not be in the teacher's class roster, but we will get individual scores on those students. When we upload our rosters in January, then those new students become part of that roster, because you upload each time
Yeah.
to NEWA, because they know your class rosters are going to change. But we're able to test every single student now as they come in new in math and in reading, which gives us some good ideas on what placement does this child need. So we can also do that even though the window is closed.
Excellent. One other thing, what's the length of time of the intervention and enrichment block?
It's a regular class period and it runs all year. Now, it could be that a student is in math intervention for the first semester and may go to reading intervention second semester if indeed that's what that child needs. Some students will stay in math intervention the entire year, some will stay in reading the entire year.
So it's regular block.
Regular class block, exactly,
Great.
yeah.
Thank
So
you.
basically, I have 2 math classes,
Yeah,
and most likely with my math teacher.
super.
Carol?
I just wanted to thank you and Leslie and Ann and Dexter, who's not here, for everything that you've been doing with the middle school to try to move this project along as smoothly as you are. I think I can't think of any other word than it's very classy the way that you're dealing with the situation by, some people might say, oh, this is chaos, so we don't have to deliver the same quality of education. Instead, you're saying, let's use it as a teaching opportunity. Let's make the most of it, and it doesn't seem like anything's suffering so far. And so I really applaud you for doing that,
Thank
and
you.
the JBC for supporting you. I really think a lot of places would not handle it this well, and I think that's really terrific, and I really thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you. We've had a lot of time to think about it. Gilbane's been
Gilbane,
fantastic.
yeah, Gilbane's
They've been
great.
excellent to work with. They keep us up to date on
Great.
everything that's happening, and we have not eliminated or decreased any programs at all. Really added programs, is what we've done.
Right, and I also would just add to that, I'm on the Library Board of Trustees, and they're also really pleased with how the whole thing is going. And I live in that neighborhood, and it's just amazing how smoothly things are going.
It's good to know.
The first time in my 38 years at the middle school that I haven't seen the library parking lot flood.
So beautiful.
So I think they have straightened out the drainage problems.
Yes.
Leslie?
Actually, Ann asked one of my questions, but my other question was about the NEWA. You said parents get the results of that? Is that
Yes,
at
we'll
the end
get
of the
those
year?
mailed out to parents
3 times a year or just at the end?
3 times. We'll send them out all 3 times. And I'm crafting a letter to the parents because the first report is just going to show that one data point and not any growth and so on. So it's like, we need to really say to folks, this is what this is all about. And the nice thing is, NEWA has a place right on their site for parents to go to, where they can look at, the 20 common questions that parents have about NEWA testing and what is a RIT score and things like that. So folks will be able to go online and actually see even more than one would put in a letter, basically.
Perfect.
So parents will be getting those probably by the end of the week, those results. And we mail them out 3 times a year. And the
great.
second time, they'll see the growth, and the third time, and so on.
Thank you.
But it does show the parents, what it gives the parents is the RIT score, a percentile, and it tells them the norm for, basically for the district. So they can look at a comparison and then kind of match that up with kneecaps and to see how their son or daughter is doing.
Yep, that's great.
I have 2 quick questions, John. First, I would just want to say, it sounds fantastic, this kind of a test. The exam that is given in reading and math, each test is 1 hour? Or
Well, the thing is this, it's not a time test.
it's, okay,
So in the math, for example, there's 52 questions. I had one student who stayed in the lab 3 hours on the test. So it's not like time's up, put your pencil down.
okay,
The child can have all the time they want
Oh, all right.
to complete the test.
got it.
Typically, 1 hour. 95%
52
of the
questions.
students are going to be finished
For 52 questions?
for 52 questions.
Okay, okay.
They're all multiple choice.
Right. And then the other question is, so if they're taking it 3 times throughout the year, is the test itself over the course of the year progressive? So
Yes.
that it's testing the new things they should have learned by the middle?
The test in January is going to be more challenging than the one in September because it's all based on, okay, 7th graders in September taking this test, 7th graders in January taking the test, 7th graders in May taking the test.
Right,
So they're going to be, and it's tied into the New Hampshire Common Core standards.
right. So the test, so I guess the test reflects progressive growth over what content the school and the state would expect the student to know at the end of the year versus at the beginning of the year.
Correct.
So new information that's been taught will be at the end, will be asked at the end. That's great.
It won't be the same test at all in
Right.
January or May.
Okay. Great. That's really nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Simons is next, I think, from Pupil Instruction and Support. Welcome, Joanne.
Thank you,
Hi.
everyone, for having me back. Well, I wanted to take an opportunity, or I should say, Ed invited me to take an opportunity to share with you kind of what our restructuring at central office has meant at the school-based level. So when we met last winter, Ed proposed the restructuring and had asked about how would we look at really blending the lines between general ed and special ed, and how do we really look at pupil performance, and we look at professional development at teachers, and if we were to restructure a role, what do you envision? And so, here we are, almost a full year later, kind of thinking about, I think, 3 real big ideas. And I think those big ideas are really about communication, which is huge, collaboration, and consistency. I have to say that I've been very, very lucky, and I've said this before and I'll say it every time I'm here, to work with tremendous, tremendous administrators, teachers, and paraprofessionals. And my office support staff is just tremendous beyond words. And we've really worked hard together, I think, to pull things together such as a paraprofessional evaluation tool, to really look at a tool as an opportunity to highlight the successful pieces, the programming, the support that our paraprofessionals give our students and our teachers each and every day that we haven't been able to, say, put down on paper. It also gives us an opportunity, I think, to highlight areas that we need to work on as a system. One of the things that many of you are aware of is that each and every year our budget challenges cause all of us to redefine our roles and redefine our expectations of what our job looks like on a day-to-day basis. And what we're using are things like the paraprofessional tool, evaluation tool, and the job description, which we'll discuss a little bit later, to talk about, here are our expectations, this is what you could be doing today, this is what you could be doing in 6 months, and as a system we need to offer you the professional development and support to be successful. So those are pieces that we've been working on just since the change, since July 1, to really articulate that and put it down and to get that out to everybody. So we're really excited about that in terms of providing consistency, of communicating our expectations and really moving forward. I have to say about communication, one of the huge pieces here is meetings, but opportunities to pull people together to talk about ideas, brainstorm around issues and challenges, and to celebrate success. And that's been really wonderful, and I think you'll see on my bulleted list some of those opportunities right there. Julie Thurber, who is our paraprofessional union president, has been exceptional, and we meet almost bi-weekly, kind of talking about how to unroll the evaluation, talking about the job description, talking about supporting her staff, and she's really tremendous. We've been looking at things like ESOL, and what does it mean to support our English language learners. It's given me an opportunity to work very closely at the middle school and high school in that respect, really looking at data and talking about who needs the support, when do they need it, and how much. And in some instances, it's been a shift. And I think it's going to be really beneficial to our students, so we're really excited about that. I have tremendous coordinators who've really kept me in the loop. We meet as a team once a month. We meet at the building level every week, kind of talking about what's going on, where do we need to go, how do we need to support our teachers and kids. And so that's been really exciting, challenging, and I think a great opportunity. So those are just some of the pieces that I wanted to talk to you about. Of course, I continue with Title I. With budgetary challenges that we faced this year, we've restructured programming, I think, to really benefit students in a great way, in that at Dondero, we're targeting K through 3. And rather than trying to spread ourselves too thin, we've really tried to target early intervention and prevention. We're also using that approach at the other 2 buildings, whether it's through Title I or a reading team, and it's really working out well for us. I think our data is really supporting that we really need to focus early And so that's been really a wonderful piece to spend time and professional development on. Now, the other piece, I wish that Rebecca were here tonight, because I know the last time I was here, she had questions about outreach and the loss of that. Well, one of the pieces that we worked on is developing a partnership with Seacoast Mental Health, and I'm very excited to say they will be in our elementary schools very soon, at each elementary school supporting students who might need some therapeutic counseling that we haven't been able to provide for them. So those are all some new initiatives, and I think really comes from the ideas of people like Amy Donovan, who's our guidance department head, of the principals saying, how can we think differently and out of the box and build on partnerships? So that's really been exciting. So, now, I shared with you, I'm almost a little bit embarrassed to say our circles, because I am certainly not at the center of the circle here, although visually I am. What we do want to show you, as everyone here can attest, is that everyone is doing more. I think everyone can say that we add to our plates and we don't take away. So these are all the spinning plates that come under my office, but you'll see things like Robert J. Lister Academy. Now, of course, that means I'm partnering with the fabulous Nancy Roy and the middle school with John and Jeff Martell. It does not mean that I'm in there micromanaging. It means I get the opportunity to get into those schools more often and to work with the staff, and it's been really exciting. So you can see a number of our different departments that both Marge Achilles, my administrative assistant, and Donna Sully, who supports me with Title I and my other grants, we all work with these people, and it's we're busy. We're very, very busy. And I hope that when we reflect in a year, we can say we've been busy and successful. So I think that's really what it's all about. Now, the other pieces, I'm not going to go into detail on them, but for many of you that have been on the board for a while have traditionally seen charts come out of the special ed office, so I didn't want you to leave here feeling unsatisfied. So we left you some charts that I did want to just go over with you, just a few little tidbits, important information in terms of our special ed services. We are currently working with 418 plus, you'll see it's 0.5, identified students in the system. And it's broken down by school and by level. So, and then the second chart shows you the different disabilities that, oh, actually, no, that's for a later presentation. It's to save that. We'll talk about that one later. I don't think you have that one with you, but by school you'll see the breakdown there. And you'll see that, of course, our middle and high school have the largest number, but that's just by sheer volume. But at the elementary level, we've seen an increase at Little Harbor, and we've seen an increase at PEEP in terms of our numbers there. I think what's happening is we're getting better and wiser about identifying students, that we really know what to look for students that are on the autism spectrum. And we're seeing those numbers in terms of that PEEP, those little guys coming in. We're really working closely. Beth Satir works very closely with other community members, identifying, doing home visits, and bringing those kids into school at the early age of 3. So those were just some of the pieces there. Does anybody have a question about this chart?
Just one, the SAU 50 number.
Yes.
Is a inclusive number, not an exclusive number, meaning it's talking about 61 from SAU 50, but they're part of the high school.
Yes.
Right.
Correct. So that's been a long-standing, I think, conversation that's happened at the board level, kind of looking at them in that separate piece, as that separate piece of the pie, just to give you that perspective. But they are within.
There are 61 out of the
Yes,
101.
correct.
Right. That's great, thanks.
Correct, for sure. So I will.
Can I just follow up on that?
I think that's an add-on, Joanne.
Yeah,
isn't
that
it?
can't be right, because that would mean that,
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Right.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did.
101 high school students
That are our
plus-
Portsmouth students. I did misspeak,
Plus.
Tom.
So
I
it's-
apologize.
Okay, so it's 162, okay.
Yeah, I do
All right.
apologize for that.
I was just suddenly going, wow, SAU 50.
Yeah, no, they're not going to be happy, so I do apologize. Let's go in
not here to
reverse,
defend
reverse the
herself.
tape. But in the .5 student is a tuitioned-in student. That's why we have that unusual number there. And so she spends half the time, I know,
Half a
I said
child.
that too. But the way that Margie Killey really determines, and the way it's reported to the state, is that a young lady is viewed as .5 here within the city. So, any other questions on this piece? All right, wonderful. And then the other piece that seems to be, as I said, a historical document, and I think these are also tools to look at in terms of that communication and that consistency piece, is I have two charts in there that explain both the Medicaid reimbursement and the catastrophic aid reimbursement. And you'll see that our numbers in terms of, say, Medicaid reimbursement, if you were to look at the initial numbers from 04-05, we were down at $167,000 for reimbursement, and now we're anticipating over $400,000+ of revenue coming in. And really where that comes down to is a lot of wonderful professional development, I think, for our staff in terms of writing really good IEPs about services. I think that's really important. We're being very consistent with our language, so we know what we can and we cannot get reimbursement for. What it also is actually is a sign of the economy. Students are eligible for Medicaid reimbursement if their children receive Healthy Kids Gold. And so we're seeing more of our students now eligible to get this Medicaid reimbursement than we did in years past. And again, I think I have to go back. Anyone who's a veteran on the board knows that Margie Killey is a dynamo with really digging into IEPs and collecting funds back for the district, because we use those at the end of the year to fill in the bucket that is special ed. We know that we will probably run at a deficit. We've been working really hard together. I've been working very closely with Steve Bartlett to make sure that we're breaking even, but we know that we have kids with needs, and those needs can be costly. So at some point, we're going to have to look to Medicaid reimbursement in terms of filling that bucket. So.
Could I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So you said part of it is professional development in terms of learning how to and being more consistent in writing IEPs.
Correct.
That would get us more money. But then you said something about Healthy Kids Gold.
Correct.
Can
To be eligible for Medicaid reimbursement, your child has to be eligible, and what we look for is a child who receives Healthy Kids Gold. Many people may say it's along the same eligibility lines as free lunch, not reduced lunch, but for those families that are eligible by federal regulations to receive Healthy Kids Gold, then they would become eligible for the Medicaid reimbursement. So we want to be really good about writing IEPs that talk about all the services they get, because that's what we're reimbursed for. And then the final piece that I wanted to share with you tonight is the catastrophic aid and the cost reimbursement piece. And this is another great way to bring revenue in, but you'll see that we have two lines there, cost incurred and then cost reimbursed. And so the dots actually travel and you connect them at a diagonal. So, and you'll see underneath there, actually, Marge pulled this together for me to kind of explain that, say, an example, 2010, that our costs incurred were $624,000 for these particular students, and we were reimbursed close to $180,000 for that. This is an interesting figure. It changes year to year because the state determines the catastrophic aid cap. They say a child who we've spent this much money on, now above that line, that's catastrophic aid. What happens is the state keeps raising that bar. So this year, you're here. The following year, it's about $2,500 more, and it keeps increasing. What also happens is the pool of money that the state determines you can dip into to get your catastrophic aid, it's not, I don't want to say a set amount. They obviously set an amount at the beginning of the year, but a surprise, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller each year, and more districts are trying to tap into that. So it's a very tricky piece around getting that catastrophic aid in, and again, it's a huge record-keeping and very labor-intensive piece for us to really keep track of billing and expenses for students. So any questions about this?
That? Could Could I ask you for, I know this is hard, a brief explanation really as to what kind of services are we talking about here that get reimbursed?
Absolutely. And that I can do. I can tell you that these are our students in terms of expense-wise are heavy hitters. So we may be talking about students that are in out-of-district placement. A majority of these students who are eligible for catastrophic aid are out-of-district placements. So we're talking about tuitions. We're talking about transportation, which is a huge cost. Related services for these students, which could mean their speech or OT, and in some situations that tuition doesn't include that for those particular children. It depends on where their placement is. In some instances, we have children in out-of-district placement who we then have to also hire a one-on-one aide for. So it really depends on the programming and the system in place. So, and those are the kind of costs that can get buried into catastrophic aid, expenses, I should say. And we have a number of students that hit this plateau. So.
Thank you.
So that's a little bit about where I've been and where I'm going. As I said, it's all about, I didn't think I'd be as corny as coming up with the 3 C's. But as I looked at the bullet points, I really think it comes, I'm very, very lucky to work with such a great team. And that's really about the collaboration, the communication. I hope, sometimes people will say, George will call me and say, whoa, I can tell something's on your mind. You're flooding me with emails. It's about the communication, and I think the consistency around expectations. So we're really working hard with that. So thank you.
It's almost like a PLC model for this program. I mean, you're collaborating across such a broad, trying to take learnings. I mean, it's nice to hear that we're actually not just maintaining, but we're actually improving and finding some good ways to work better together. I mean, it's really nice to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks.
Again,
Any other
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Roy, Lister Academy.
Well, good evening.
Hello.
I want to start with saying I'm so grateful for the extension of a half hour of our school day, because I'm going to start with talking about what that has allowed us to do. First of all, we have not had one student complaint, which is miraculous in and of itself, really. The kids have just been, not even one single question about it. So what that's allowed us to do is every student that comes in, as you know, we test with the AccuPlacer, and we've added a few other assessments. But what we've done basically is been able to add, with a few adjustments to our schedule, a 40-minute intervention block. We call it a skills class. And so what that has allowed us to do is to do all of our testing, assessment, and data gathering during that time, so we're not pulling kids or taking curriculum time to do that. Every student, based upon the results of our testing, every student is placed into a skills block based upon their scores that at the beginning of the year. And so one student A might be in math intervention 3 days a week and reading intervention 2 days a week. One student might be in reading intervention 5 days a week. One student might be in, reading intervention 1 day a week. And with me in a group that I do twice a week in terms of highly effective skills for highly effective teens. Students that, for instance, we have a few students who have already made the cutoff score for college English at Great Bay Community College using the AccuPlacer. Those students then are given that intervention block to manage their time, to do individual work with classroom teachers on extended projects, in time management, or independent reading. So it has really allowed us to truly meet the individual needs of students. And this is the best part, our PLC work that's done on our delayed openings really takes all of that data from month to month and reevaluates, using like a portfolio, if you will, what adjustments we need to make for the following month. So every month we're looking at that data from all students in our intervention or skills class and making adjustments based upon, do we need to move this kid out of this and into that. So it's really, kids don't flinch about it. It's just part of what we do. We've done a lot of training, and I mean, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but one student didn't score very well on their AccuPlacer. He's a senior. And so I met with him and said, well, looks like you're going to be in reading intervention for 5 days a week. And guess what? He said, can I retest? I said, absolutely. And he's 1 point from the cutoff score for English at Great Bay Community College. So we've really been able to really tweak it and continue kind of to adapt to fit our model. So it's just been, it's been a wonderful thing in terms of the scheduling. And when you think about a half hour, the flexibility that has allowed us, I never thought I was saying John and I have had a similar dream in regard to not being able to imagine how that simple change has impacted us school-wide. And hopefully we'll continue to see that in the data that we collect throughout the course of the year. So we are continuing to test in math, and we're using both the AccuPlacer for the community college system, and we're using the assessment of ALEX. We're also doing the AccuPlacer in reading, and then we do a writing prompt 3 times a year. We're really hitting it hard with writing because it's the one thing that we can do across content areas in our school. So we really make that a focus. So that's really the heart, honestly. And I'm telling you, those delayed openings come up really fast. So our pace is very fast, but that's good for our population. They like that. And the data is immediate. Kids get their weekly reports in terms of how they're doing. They do their portfolio review with their teacher. And then we have, for the first time ever, 2 retired teachers who come in and work with us because we're, just like everybody else, our resources are thin when we're trying to do one-on-one with students. So we have 2 retired teachers, Woody Barr and Carrie Eagling, who come in and do our skills center time, and also Woody comes in and works in our math classrooms also. So that's been wonderful to have that kind of community support. So that's really been the heart of the work so far in regard to our PLCs. We're continuing to have our focus be preparation for post-secondary. We are just starting applications for our college transition program, which will start spring semester for juniors and seniors. So that will continue. We're doing our internship program. We had a grant, if you remember, from the DOE to do internship-based, apprenticeship-based work. We have got our own manual, so we phased out the person that we had hired to do that work, and we have taken that over. So Gina Abood is doing all of our internship placements. We have our resource guide and how we do all those kind of things. We're continuing our job shadows. What we found when we looked at our program, that we had a lot of heavy resources for juniors and seniors, but not so much for freshmen and sophomores. And so we've expanded all of our job shadows and tours to freshmen and sophomores, and we just finished 1 round at Portsmouth Hospital. We're doing another round tomorrow, and then we're going on to the Navy Yard. The community's been wonderful about working with us. So that's a separate kind of program component. What we're trying to do now is integrate into curriculum. So in Career Studies 1 and Career Studies 2, last year we did a project where students blogged with adults around relationships and all of the complications when we're in them or not in them or whatever. And this year we took that model and applied it to Career Studies, so students are blogging with employers now, and really being able to ask questions around work ethic, around work environment, around the soft skills and hard skills that are necessary to be successful in the work environment. And we've had a wonderful response, of course, from the Portsmouth community and being willing to respond and using technology to do that. It really saves all of us time in terms of trying to get meetings together and people to come in to be able to communicate using technology. So that's been a wonderful thing. Once again, we try to keep it fresh. So we partnered with Arts and Reach and the Phenomenal Women's Project, came in for the first time ever to a school and piloted their program, which is typically an after-school program, in school with our girls. It's been quite challenging for them. We have a lively group of young women. But that is really their focus there, is really bringing professional career women in to meet with girls, to talk about their experiences and the path that they took to get to where they are. And the culmination is some kind of an art piece, if you will, that the girls will be displaying at our Thanksgiving dinner on the 17th, which we hope that you can all come to. We have a brand new website that we've kind of unveiled. I hope that you have a chance to check it out. We have a few things that we're tweaking and adding to that, but that's something that's new. And of course, you've probably heard that the Lister Leaf Busters is up and running again. We're hoping to do a proposal to you folks about another trip. Needed to do some groundwork to see if we were going to be able to pull off the funding, because as you know, our students are in a position where the total cost of a trip needs to be fundraised. So last year we did a model where we integrated a business class and a science class. Once again, the person that we hired to help us with that has gone away, and we have integrated that model into our own staffing. And so we have generously received a commitment from Ted Alex of matching up to $2,400 for our Leaf Buster lawn raking. So that's not going to be a problem. We'll surpass that. And we have just gotten a $5,000 commitment from another prominent community member. So I do think that we are feeling pretty confident we'll be able to raise the money necessary. And students did a lot of research, and where they would like to go and explore this year is Puerto Rico. So at this point, our sustainability class will be hoping to be getting on a plane and heading to Puerto Rico in the spring, and you'll be hearing more about that proposal. I think that our census reflects the times. Right now, as of Wednesday, with the change in the quarter, we'll have 17 Portsmouth students. I think this is a reflection of pressure from special ed directors and student services directors to keep students in district. We're feeling that also, and we pretty much will take whatever the district gives us. So, and right now we have 6 out of district students, which is 3 down from where we were last year. So I think that, as you all know, I'm sure, of the status of the juvenile justice system, which has really had an impact on not only alternative schools, but residential and homes and group homes in the area, which typically were a feeder for our program. So we're hoping that with the change in the quarter, we will soon get some other referrals from out of district and build our population that way. So at that point, I think that's the major components that we have going at this point in time. We have a couple students over participating in the career classes over at the high school. We have somebody in automotive right now, and we're sending a paraprofessional over with them, and they're being quite successful. So we're hoping to also be able to provide that as another path to post-secondary training for our students, as opposed to a transition back to a more traditional high school, if you will. If that makes sense to you. So with that, if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them. We good?
Any questions? I guess I do have a couple of quick questions. So traditionally in the past, I can't remember, it was an even split between Portsmouth students and tuitioned-in students.
It depends how far back you want to go. Yes, way back when.
Well, what was last year's, for example? Was it
last year's was 15 and 12.
15
out
so
of
it was
district,
closer.
12
So we really
in
are
district.
seeing a dip in tuition students.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and so can you talk a little bit about also the SMART goals that you have? Are these?
Mm-hmm. Our SMART goals are based upon our AccuPlacer data, basically, in reading, which is we're trying to get our students, by the time they leave us, prepared to take a college based upon the cutoff scores for the community college, which is the cutoff score of 65, ready to enter the community college system with no developmental courses.
Remedial.
Without any.
Right, because you talked about that in the
And
past.
that is a difficult challenge for some of our students, because we can see beginning of the year scores at 30, 25. So depending on what year they are, there can be lots of work to do. The math is the same thing, only it's a little bit more complicated because the AccuPlacer in math has an arithmetic score, a pre-algebra score, or elementary algebra score, and a college algebra score. And the cutoff isn't as simple as the reading cutoff score. There's a formula. So a kid could do really well in the arithmetic, but really bomb the elementary, and still need 3 developmental courses. So it's the formula between those two that determines how many developmental courses. And the college system, for those of you who don't know, you can basically attend a community college needing 3 developmental courses in English or in reading or in math. So you would pay for 3 classes before you would even start taking your college level class. And obviously for our students, we want to avoid that kind of cost.
Right.
So our goal for there, depending on what their cutoff score is to begin with, if they needed 3 developmental courses in September, we want to change that by at least 1 developmental course by the end of the year. And for some students, that might be a 15-point spread in their arithmetic score. For other students, it might be a combination between their elementary algebra and their arithmetic. So we're looking at growth. At this point, we don't have any. We have 1 student that has made the cutoff for college algebra. So, and then writing, we have aligned our writing rubric with the AccuPlacer scores. And so we do a writing prompt 3 times a year.
So every remedial course a student needs to take at the community college is a disincentive for them to actually move forward.
Absolutely.
Right.
And as you know, when I talk about we're really continuing our mission with hope and resilience, truly, we still believe in the American dream, that education makes a difference. It's really difficult right now for some of our families. We're really having, for the first time since I can remember, in a long, long time, our 18-year-olds considering dropping out to work to help support their families. It is really, really difficult there for our population right now. And so we've done a lot. We're like a mini social service agency. We have Seacoast mental health counselors in there. We have Voc Rehab in there, once a month. We are very friendly with, the food banks. We're taking kids to do laundry. We're picking kids up in the morning to bring their laundry to school to do it. It's really it's trying times for folks. So, but even given that, it's really been helpful to have a focus on, they might not be able to control any of that, but they can control this score on this particular assessment.
Right.
And for some students, that goes a long way, what we can control and what we can't.
Right. So you can help them focus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Tom.
Just one question. Just going back to your census information and just saying how the economy is just creating a lot of challenges, but also for our own kids that are coming in out of district kids. Is there anything from that you want the board to consider in terms of just making our program as competitive? I like hearing about the Covey's 7 Habits, the Phenomenal Women Project. Some things that are definitely creating value with the program. But are there things that other programs are doing that are creating more value for kids to say? You could also say that this is just an economic play. It's money out of district that districts don't have to spend to put kids in our program, or is there some value that we're missing out on delivering to students that other programs are doing that we should take a look at, trying to change our program a little bit, adding some other feature that would create the value that would be the tipping point to send a child into our program?
Well, I think that's a fantastic question, and I think both, because I think that honestly, I've met with other principals and directors of alternative schools, and quite frankly, they're all making appointments with me because they think we have, we're kind of the gold standard, and everybody's suffering. I do think, and I like the thinking, that I don't know if I connect it, I mean, I think we have to connect it to the economy because we want to survive, but I think we have to connect it to what's best for kids. So yes, I do think that there are things that we can do that would better serve not only the out-of-district students and be a tool to send kids, but also for our in-district students. We have based, we've just come so far, since I've been there. But there's still work to do because we've based our model on, they come to us, and then for a lot of reasons, they either stay or they don't want to go back because we have some opportunities that they can't access at the high school. But I do think that the one area that has been difficult for us, or the culture at the school has been, if kids go over to the high school, that means that they're transitioning back. Instead of having the lens of the high school has a menu of things that students at Lister Academy can access a piece of, like all of the things in the career. So I do think that that's an issue, but I don't want to minimize the impact that a student in our school that's having a lot of difficulty would have on a classroom there. And so I think it's, it's a very fine line to walk. We do have a student there now, but we send a para with that student, so it's resource intensive, if you will.
Right.
But I do think that we have to open up that, because there's no way that I can offer automotive to students at my school. So I do think that there are some things to do. I think that more collaboration and more partnerships and different thinking around how to better serve the needs of students, because when you think about our college program, that's a limited amount of seats right now.
Sure. Well, I guess the thing that just, I think the opportunity stands is that, we've always looked at the Lister Academy as a self-funding program because we have enough kids that are tuitioning in that are covering the cost of our own students. So we've always looked at this as sort of a net zero cost. Like we have this great program. It's not costing us a lot of money, if any, money at all. But now the tide is starting to switch, and I think that just as we get into budget season, wanting to think that spending money to save money might be a concept that maybe has to be thought about. Just how do we improve this program to maintain the money that we are generating to keep the program self-funding? Anyway, just a thought.
Right, so I would just add, at least my understanding, two things. I mean, I know other districts have found that them meeting their own services often is cheaper for them than sending them to us. We know that's been a trend. But the other thing is, we do support the program, and that's been tough over the years because it's not self-sustaining, because we've taken $400,000, if not more, out of the general fund to support what we believe is important to make sure that things are successful for SPED across the board.
Sure.
Right? So am I wrong? Is it,
No,
it's
we
not,
pay for our
is it self-sustaining?
No.
It has been self-sustaining. I think that about
Right.
5 years ago, the district made the decision to pay for 12 slots at the
Portsmouth
per pupil
Right.
rate. And there's a vast difference between that and what
Right.
our tuition is.
So help me out. So it's not self-sustaining at the moment, or it is?
Well, it depends on your definition of self-sustaining.
Right.
I would say
Quite frankly.
self-sustaining means you bring in as much money as you need to pay out, so.
And if that's your definition, then the answer is no, we're not, because what we do is take 12 of the prior year's tuition that we pay. So we pay for our own students. We've been doing that for
Right,
like 4
putting it
years.
aside, right.
We also have an agreement with SAU 50 where that whatever the percentage of SAU 50 students to high school students, that we take that percentage of what we contribute and charge them for that as well for ongoing support of the program. And so it was about 4 years ago that we, maybe 5, Ann, you could be correct. Probably about 5 years ago that we decided that we had to do that because we were not getting as many of the outside students. And so we've been able to, over the last couple of years, if we've had a slow year, we've been able to make it up with a good year and had some fund balance to keep it going. So it's sort of been trying to keep it level. But this coming year, we'll looks like it's going to be the toughest one to meet our targets. So
Okay.
we'll be, watching that closely.
Right. So, yes, Clay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nancy, it's nice to see you again. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was about 5 years ago, were we going out of state to find students to participate with?
We get
with the
students from
school?
Maine, from southern Maine. We have students that are tuitioned in from southern Maine. Is that what you're
Yes.
referring to? Yep. We don't really get them from Massachusetts. We have a student now from Manchester. I mean, they come from all over.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
The Bible has the financial report.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. McDonough. Not a very exciting one. As usual, there are a number of variances in the salary and benefits line, which is typical at this throughout the year. They fluctuate up and down a little bit as we catch up at the end of a quarter. Most of them can be attributed to timing. We have right now, we have a reallocation of some teachers' salary to the Ed Jobs grant, which we haven't been able to reallocate yet because we've been waiting for the state tracking process to give us a number with which to use to set it up. That should be forthcoming. There are things like the one thing that I know that in spite of the fact that I tried to beef it up in last year's budget, the unemployment hit was probably going to exceed budget. So we'll be watching that, but it's generally not a humongous amount in the overall budget, but it certainly seems like a humongous amount compared to itself in history. In the operating section, there are a number of variances. Again, as I pointed out last month, although I try to predict and put the plan together based on historic patterns every year, student needs change, things come out. The schedules aren't always the same for when people go to purchase things, as well as the fact is that I'll remind you that we had a big change in department heads, and that does between the change in the department heads and the team leaders, it usually takes them a couple of cycles to get used to the ebb and the flow of how it goes. Lots of times when they're brand new, they get a little bit nervous and want to try to really do a bang-up job, and sometimes they spend stuff early. But I'd like to point out that spending money early is not bad, because then you have the items in here for the the students to use for the entire year. So it's a reasonable philosophy to follow. Some things, another example of things that changed, there was a maintenance contract in the computer area, which in previous years we were able to split it up, so we had half in one half of the year and half in the other, and this year it just turned out the way things worked out. We paid for the whole contract in 2 payments, but it's in the first quarter. So it's going to be those timing things. But generally, if you look at the numbers, there isn't anything there that doesn't have enough budget left between now and the end of the year that we can't, make it work. Cost Center 207, in my haste to get this ready for the board packets, I printed before saving, so therefore I'm providing you with another page 4, because there was one section where it didn't update properly in the expense section. Not major, but be accurate.
So just one question on the 207 account on the revenue side. I'm assuming the numbers that you put in are these were put in quite some time ago versus Ms. Simon's projections are based on more current data. Just
Well, Ms. Simon's projections are for the year.
For the year.
And yours and what?
But I'm looking at like 2012 budget annual versus October actual. So I'm just curious. You have it at 190. She had it at 240.